is this way, I'll tell you the story, and it's a true story about a fella living up beyond me in the county Cavan. A fella with the name of P.J. Galligan, and a right devil he is too. A go-boy of the highest order, or a playboy, or a cowboy, or a chancer, or whatever you want to call it. His mother, the Lord have mercy on her, she used to say that P.J. was born with a wooden spoon in his mouth. And sure, he's been stirring it up ever since. He's living in a wee place there called Killincare. It's between Virginie and Bailaborough. I don't know if you know the place. Doesn't matter a damn if you do, some of you might. Well, you'll agree with me that Killincare is a very small place. In fact, it's so small that you'd take it in if it rained. And that's true. I'll give you the phone number for the Ordnance Survey Office if you don't believe me. Peter had various jobs going on down through the years, scams and the like. At one point he had an old demolition business going. He called it Galligan Destruction. And he had a slogan painted up on the side of the truck: Galligan Destruction, jobs done at knockdown prices. Estimates cheap. And he got this local art student to paint it up for him. This art student, he was one of the dailies at Killishandra, the eldest boy, his name was? Salvador was his name. True now, Salvador Daly. A dab hand at the finger painting, as someone said. But he painted up the slogan on the side of the truck. Now, Peter had a fellow working for him one time called Philly Brady. And Philly Brady was a fierce man to work altogether. Big pair of hands on him like two bunches of bananas. And if ever you were doing a job and you had a problem, maybe the last fella had gumpered it, made a mess of it, you'd sit around and have a few smokes and look at the problem from this angle or that angle. Philly Brady would always come up with the perfect solution. Give it the sledge, he'd say. And that was fine unless you were building a glass house or a greenhouse or something like that. Anyway, Philly was a great man to work, as I was saying, but sad to say, one day didn't Philly die on the job. PJ reversed the JCB over him. A couple of times. And he was shocked and sad altogether, as many people are, I'm sure, on the day that they die. And indeed, PJ was fairly sad too, because poor old Philly was the best worker he ever had. So he decided he'd have to do something about this. The poor devil was dead, the corpse was there, and he decided to give him a bit of a dig out. So doesn't he drag poor Philly's carcass out from underneath the wheels of the JCB. Some people now said he should have reversed the JCB off him first, but that's the way it happened. He got him out, and poor Philly was in bits. He was in flickers, stone dead. He had been wearing a wig for the last number of years, and that was all askew. Indeed, I remember the first time he got the wig, people said that in the new wig he looked 10 years sillier. So Peter got the wig and stuffed it into his jacket pocket, and he said the sight of poor Philly there, squashed on the ground, the carcass all caved in, the bananas were mush. And he said, I wouldn't mind only he was wearing a good pair of work overalls that I'd lent him. I bought them 20 years ago in Virginie, and there was a fair few years wear left in them, but for now they were in flitters. Anyway, he got poor old Philly's corpse into the bucket of the JCB and drove him into Bailaborough. Went looking for the local undertaker. McCabe is the man's name, McCabe the undertaker. And indeed, McCabe was within in the undertaker's shop. All undertakers should give an undertaking that they'll be there when you arrive, because you might need them. And there, beside the shop, there was a big room to the side, a mortuary room, I suppose you'd call it. And at the top of this room, there were two coffins. Now, one of them was full of Smith, the solicitor, died that morning, choked on a turkey bone. And he was laid out in his coffin, and he looked fairly much at his ease, as solicitors do often look. He was there with his hands crossed over his chest, wearing a grand suit, pinstripe, the works. The other coffin was empty, just as well, because they had to put poor old Philly somewhere. Now, the coffin was a normal-sized coffin, and Philly at the best of times was a tall man. And after this bit of an accident where he got squashed under the JCB, well, let's say Philly, he put on a bit of height. So how were they going to fit him in? Well now luckily, one of his legs was broken here at the shin, and Peter said, if we break the other leg and try and break it in the same place, we can bend the bottom parts of the legs up under him, so he'll fit into the coffin. And they had to go with this, and they broke the other leg, and they got it fairly close now. Anyway, says Peter, I wonder could you doll him up? Oh, by the way, here's the wig. And McCabe says, I'll put the wig on him, I'm a professional. Will you doll him up? And look, he's in flippers. Now, I have to go down the town, ring his poor mother, Mrs. Brady, and tell the brothers and sisters that he's in an awful state and that he's dead. If you can sort him out, maybe look at the state of him there and them poor old overalls. If you can get him a good suit, something like what McCabe, something like what Smith the solicitor is wearing, and if you can get a suit at the right price, I'll drop you a few bob, no problem. Don't you worry, says McCabe the undertaker, I'll sort him out. So, Peter went off down the town, and he had himself a tightener, it's sort of a mixed grill affair, and he had a few bottles of McCardles and that, and he rang up poor old Philly's mother to tell her the sad news. About 7 o'clock that evening, he went up to the undertaker's shop and he had a peep in, and there at the top of the mortuary room was Philly's mother, Mrs. Brady, and Philly's brothers and sisters looking into Philly's coffin. And they seemed fairly pleased now, considering. She comes down the room and Peter says, I'm very sorry for your trouble. He was a great man to walk, fierce man out to walk altogether, and it's shocking sad the way he finished up there. And by the way, I owe him a half a morning's wages. He died about 11:05, we'll say 1/4 and I'll post on the money to you when I find a stamp. And she said, oh, thanks very much, and she went off. Well, he went up and he had a peep into the coffin, and there was poor Philly laid out looking fairly resplendent. McCabe, ever the professional, he'd stapled the wig on so that it looked much straighter ever than it had while Philly was alive. And there was Philly that they'd run a comb through the wig and they'd brushed the tooth and that. And his hands were crossed over his chest there, and him wearing a grand suit. A grand pinstripe suit, the works. Peter went looking for the undertaker. He said, you did a great job there. I'd have to give you a few bob for that old suit. Not at all, says McCabe the undertaker, not at all. It won't cost you anything. I tell you what I did. I just switched the heads around. Now,